So, welcome to Cardano Q&A. Anybody got any questions? Anything burning a hole in there?
I put that message up on Discord.
Okay.
About Nami wallet being hacked or ADA disappearing from that. I don't know if people have heard about that.
Oh yeah, that's right. So that looked like a very dubious post, to be honest. You today. So this is the post that Dinesh found. Title of it: Cardano ADA being stolen from Nami wallets. Users report. And unfortunately, victims are unlikely to return any funds stolen by hackers or scammers. And this is just all pure speculation, not based on any fact at all. It just seems to be like you read through the article and it's just saying that an increasing number of investors are having their transactions stolen from Nami wallets. But it turns out the breach is due to weak passwords and compromised devices. Nothing to do with Nami, nothing to do with Cardano. It's just bad password management. And yet they've brought in the name of a community project, a very, cost-efficient community project who was first to build out a wallet on Cardano, a community wallet, and has been nothing but generous towards the community. He's the creator of Space Buds as well. Really good guy. So I have no idea why this piece of press was written, other than it just seems like it's an attack on him or on Cardano itself. So unfortunately, there's no value in this post whatsoever, and just fear, uncertainty, and doubt spreading.
Good to know.
Yeah. So
just on that, Jonathan. So if you wanted to change, if you personally know how to use the Nami wallet, if you wanted to obviously change your password, is it an easy thing to do?
So effectively, what you would just do is delete your. Make sure you've got a working copy of your seed phrase. Excuse me. Then delete that wallet and import using your seed phrase again. And in that process of importing, that's when it offers you the opportunity to set a new spending password. So then you can set a new one and go from there. So anytime you're using your seed phrase, it'll give you the option, or you're importing with your seed phrase, it'll give you the option to create a new passphrase, which is like the temporary password that just gets you into the wallet to spend transactions, to sign transactions. But it's not something that you have to keep forever. You can change that whenever you need. The only thing you can't change whenever you want to is the seed phrase. If you need to change your seed phrase because you think it's been compromised, then you have to move all the funds. So you'd create a new wallet that would create you a new seed phrase, and then you go back to your old existing wallet, send all the funds out of that wallet to the new receive address of the new wallet, and then you can stop using your old wallet. But that's an actual moving of assets from one wallet to another. That's the only way you can reset your passphrase is in effect. Good.
But I take it obviously if you have funds coming, or obviously funds or tokens coming to that original wallet, you would still have to keep it anyway. If you lost your seed phrase or whatever.
Yeah. So if you do have a seed phrase at any point, it's worth hanging on to, just in case anybody's using it unbeknown to you, and something turns up in that wallet that you need access to. So it could be, Project Catalyst rewards or something that come into it after the fact. So in fact, I've had that. One of my businesses used a wallet for a while, and then we closed it down, and then I had 5 ADA pop up about 3 months later. I was like, what has that got in there? I think it was to do with some kind of reward from one of the projects I've been involved in. So yeah, seed phrases are very important to not lose them, and also to keep for long term, just in case something turns up in them that you're not expecting. Good shout. Anything else on wallet seed phrases? I don't know this news site actually, new today. It doesn't seem to be any particularly bad posts other than that one. So we'll see. We'll see down the road what its true position is and whether it's just a rogue journalist.
I see Lace has been updated. Is it version 1.2 now?
Yeah, something like that. Lace is, it was promised that it would happen this way. We'd wait for ages for Lace to launch. And then when it launched, it would be underwhelming. And then there'll be a fast iteration of upgrades. So that's what we're seeing. I haven't actually got it on because I've switched operating systems to try and avoid these Zoom crashes. Not that I can blame it on Zoom. I think it's more to do with my graphics hardware drivers. But the Lace, I'm just typing what I see now. I've switched to Windows, so this is running on Windows now. But I was actually searching for the Lace wallet. So version 1.1 is out now. Have you seen new features in it, Paul? Have you been playing with it at all?
No, I just saw that it had been updated. I'm like you, I'm an Eternl junkie.
Okay. Actually, no, it's 1.2 that's out. So they've gone from they've had 1.1 already and now 1.2. So it's showing you that they've improved the NFT interface. So you can now pick up NFTs and browse your collection a bit more easily. They've got a dApp connector that's more widely accepted. You can sign transactions with a staking key. That's interesting. And they've improved the balance display, which is quite often a tricky thing to get right in a wallet. Because you can have, in Cardano, you've got an extended UTXO model where you can have multiple transactions, transaction outputs, transaction inputs, and each of those need to be calculated to actually create your balance. So within Eternl, you can see all your existing outputs and the different balances of tokens on each of those, and the sum of that will actually give you your balance. Whereas new wallets are struggling to find all the different potential transactions formats that can be created with these extended UTXOs, and so getting the balance is much more tricky than you think. So even IOG development team based out of the guys who created the chain itself, it's taken a little while to get that balance thing right, and it's faster, which is always a good thing. So actually, while I'm here, I could so you're safe to follow the link from the website you're confident in through to the Chrome store. But when you're here, do check on the check it's got this little certificate badge to say that Chrome believes it's the correct manufacturer for that wallet. You can check back for the URL back to the website. Windows, open the new tab, and that will show you, yes, we're back to where we started again. I like to do that round loop, and then you should be safe at that point to add it to your browser. It's always worth installing the browser extension rather than using the website version of any of these wallets. Because that actually runs from local storage rather than from web storage. Web storage is on someone else's servers, local storage is on your machine. So here it was then, if you're importing your existing seed phrase, you can restore wallet. I think everybody seems to phrase it slightly differently. the week. I'll use my password generator. This is creating a brand new wallet. No, entering your existing seed phrase. So yeah, if you were taking your Nami wallet over into here, you would, I think my Nami certainly is a 15-word one. I'm not sure if it can create 24-word ones, but yeah, you choose a number of words in your seed phrase and then type them in here, and that'll get you into the wallet. And then you can experience Eternl running in parallel with Lace, controlling the same set of assets. That's something you might want to play with, just as a good exercise. But yeah, we so far in this call pretty much all using Eternl wallet, which is very feature rich. Bit daunting for the newcomer, but has all the. So I was talking about the UTXOs here. So if you look under Eternl wallet, you can see all the UTXOs within my single wallet. So I've got 32 over 10 different addresses. And each of those addresses, so this receive address ending in GBC is holding some gimbals, some MAC tokens, some NFTs. And then I've got another one down here, which is holding a different set of NFTs with a different ADA balance. Another one here, again, different balance, different NFTs, different tokens, fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. And so your actual assets get spread out over multiple transaction outputs, but all of them contribute to the balance of your wallet because you can sign keys to make changes to any of those addresses, the assets on any of those addresses. So there we go. Quite a complex setup, but leads you to a whole load of power you wouldn't have otherwise.
Sorry, Paul. I was going to say I've lost me there a bit. So when I click on my UTXO link here, there's a number of addresses in there, and different balances for different addresses. What does that? How do you read that, rather?
So you don't really have to get involved with it unless you're having an issue of some sort or are very curious. But effectively with the Cardano blockchain, so Cardano blockchain based its model on Bitcoin's method of tracking transactions. Ethereum is the one that broke a protocol and created something based on the account-based model rather than the unspent transaction outputs model. So you've got these two competing models really in the blockchain space. The account model is easiest to understand, and that's based pretty much like any accounting system you've ever used. So you'll have money being sent from one account to another, like so maybe from your Barclays account to your HSBC account, and this might be in your account package, and you'd see that just as money in, money out, and you have to balance those with each other to know exactly how much you've got in your account. And so to understand that model, you really have a full picture of what's going on and how much money you actually own between your Barclays and your HSBC account. You need to know the global state of the account in HSBC and the account in Barclays. Add them together, and then you've got your balance of the money you actually hold, that money you actually own, how much you can then go and spend. And to transact between HSBC and Barclays need to know that HSBC account has got enough money to pay what it's saying it's sending over, and vice versa. If you're sending money from Barclays to HSBC needs to know whether Barclays can honor the amount you're sending over. And so you've got this global understanding of how much money is where all the time. With UTXOs, unspent transaction outputs, which is a model that Bitcoin uses and Cardano uses, you're actually dealing much more on a sort of cash system. So if I go into a shop with my credit card, pay with my credit card, then the person selling me the goods needs to know that I've got enough money on my credit card or my debit card to actually pay for the goods. And so it will go and check the global state in the credit network. That's why credit cards, you always need to have an internet connection or a phone connection to find out whether you can use your card or not. So if you're ever at a festival and there's no Wi-Fi, you might not be able to pay with credit card. With the different model, UTXO model, it's much more like carrying cash. So you've got a £50 note, you go to a festival with no Wi-Fi connection, it's not a problem. You're holding the actual asset in your hand, or as good as the asset in your hand. You can hand that over, they'll give you the goods and they'll give you the change back at the same time. So the restriction within that relationship is that you have to hand over so in your wallet, you've got £50 note, £20 note, you're buying something for £30. You can only really hand over your £50 note. And so the person has to be able to give you change enough to give you back £30 in change. And so that in itself, in its entirety, holds all the information it needs for that transaction to happen just between the two of you. So it's kind of peer-to-peer. And that's the real benefit of an unspent transaction output model rather than an account model. You don't have to go back to the global state to find out how much money you can buy or spend or receive. You know, just between the cash in hand. And so that's the beauty of it. And so the blockchain behind Bitcoin and Cardano using UTXOs. And so what you're seeing in this Eternl wallet here, this interface here, is actually like chunks of cash. So for example, on this GVC address, I have an ADA balance of 1.34903 ADA. So anytime I'm going to spend money from this wallet, if I'm buying something that's worth less than that, then I could use this UTXO to buy something for 0.34 ADA, for example. If I needed to buy something that was worth more than that, so worth 5 ADA, I'd need to use this UTXO and this UTXO, which is 1.5 ADA, and in fact this next one as well, which is 142 ADA. And suddenly I've got, oh, okay, perhaps I won't use these two UTXOs. I'll just use this third one, which has got 140 ADA balance, and in that transaction, I'll hand over 142 ADA into that transaction, that exchange. The other person will then give me change back worth 135 or 137. So there'll be 5 ADA that goes to them. They give me change back over 135, 137, and there we have the full 142 made up in that exchange. And so it's much more like a cash system. You're sending over the full amount from a UTXO and you're receiving back a full UTXO as well. And so there's finality between the two parties in that exchange. They can trust that I've given, I can pay what I'm saying I'm giving them, and I know that the transaction will only go through to finality if they've got enough change to give me, if they can give me the change back, right? And so this lends itself particularly well to down the road. You can have your phone with your wallet on, for example, in the Sahara Desert with no internet connection whatsoever. You can go to someone else who's got a phone with no internet connection, and so long as these two devices can communicate with each other, to say, yeah, I can participate in this transaction, you can participate in this transaction, then that transaction can happen offline. It'll only be known by those two devices. But when those two devices go back, one goes to Egypt, the other goes to Ghana, and they go back online, then that transaction information will go to the blockchain, and you can then do a full global state to find out how much is in each wallet, and it will update accordingly within the interfaces on everybody's phones, not just in yours. So it means that you've got this asynchronous transactions that can happen offline, sorry, and still be fully trusted, because the state of the transaction will be known as soon as it gets back together, and everybody's got a copy of the blockchain on their device anyway. So everybody exchanges that copy of the blockchain, and everybody knows then that, okay, those two wallets that transacted in the middle of the Sahara Desert, we know that that transaction happened. We know how much was exchanged between the parties, exactly what went on. So it's really powerful in terms of operating in areas where you know, like the Ethereum blockchain just won't be able to work offline in that manner. So yeah.
Gobsmacked. I
Yeah.
didn't realize there was so much thinking gone behind this. So you could. I always wondered how it would operate if there was no internet connection. So
Right.
this was the implementation solution for offline transactions.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So how would the two devices offline next to each other communicate?
So that could be any means of communication that the technology is able to do. So it could be Bluetooth, it could be Apple's Air, what's it called, Air Gap or something.
Yeah.
It could be QR codes pointing at each other.
Oh, I see.
Cameras and pointing at a QR code, vice
Right.
versa.
Okay, so QR code might be the easiest offline solution, isn't it?
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
One does a request, the other one scans and go. Jobs are good. And
Yeah. And in fact, there's a project that I was lucky enough to be in a presentation of from its inception, which is an electronic point of sale being built out on Cardano. So the implementation was by a guy in the Netherlands, I think, Martin. He has worked in the point of sale industry for a while. He's an industrial designer. So he built out a coin mechanism for a till system. So it would actually count coins in like a dispensing machine or change machine, which is a very complicated affair because you've got extremely high tolerance on coin shapes and sizes. So Denti coins and stuff, you have to then add some tolerance for those sort of anomalies. And anyway, he's very, very clever guy. And he built out a electronic point of sale for Cardano. So operating on the Cardano blockchain. He's combined it with the Game Changer wallet, which I've talked about again as well. Again, another project that was incepted and talked about out of the Gimbal Labs team. Martin's electronic point of sale, again, come out of Gimbal Labs conversations. And together they've now produced this real world point of sale that you can take into a store. It displays a QR code on the till effectively. You get a transaction on your phone. From that, you can then sign the transaction on your phone, and that transaction will have executed on the blockchain just by you having device visually talking to the till. So really clever, low tech, cheap way of implementing transactions that would be accessible to anybody anywhere in the world. Really clever stuff.
Really good. Thank you.
Jonathan, could we say that in that scenario, for Ethereum would you say it's centralized and Cardano is non-centralized? Would you calculate that way? Because obviously, like with as you say, Cardano is peer-to-peer, more sort of like in a cash sort of system, whereas other one with Ethereum is more sort of like account. So that's more centralized, isn't it? Could we?
You could probably add it into the centralization argument, yes. In reality, the Ethereum is fully decentralized still, in any sense, in any metric. Just because it has to have this global state doesn't mean that it's not decentralized. So any transaction that does happen on the Ethereum blockchain is 100% correct and verifiable. One of the major downsides that come out of the Ethereum model of doing things, though, is that you have to have you have no determinism. So when you go into a transaction, you don't actually know if it's going to succeed or not, but you pay your fees up front. So you go and transact into a transaction with somebody else. You say, okay, I want to give you 30, I need change of 10. You pay the fees, which might be $5 worth of Ethereum. And then actually you find that one of the components in that exchange, that transaction, doesn't have enough balance when you check the global state or something like that. Then that transaction will actually be rejected from the chain, but the fees will already have been taken. But you'll end up with your funds effectively, the transaction not having happened, but the fees have been taken. So you haven't lost money in that regard, you've just lost transaction fees. But that's a downside of the Ethereum mechanism over the Cardano one. With Cardano, you have fully deterministic transactions. So you know going into it, when you've paid your fee, that transaction happens. I don't know quite what the correct tense of it is. It has happened or will have happened, or yeah. But anyway, you can trust that it's happening and it will go to completion. It's deterministic, and so that was again, all the thought that got into Bitcoin and to Cardano. Have thought about all these scenarios in the future, written them into the core. They've swallowed the complication bullet, and we're now reaping the benefits down the road. So it's a much more complex system, and therefore prone to user interface bugs and things like that, like the balance not being correct in lace for some strange scenarios. That's because of the complexity of the underlying protocol. But the benefits are you've suddenly got deterministic, you've got cheap transactions, you've got peer-to-peer happening offline. All these things are as a result of the decisions made really early on by the developers. So yeah, in terms of centralization, they're both as decentralized as each other. Exactly, at any point, if you have a copy of the Ethereum blockchain, then you know all the transactions that have ever happened on it. So in that sense, everybody has a copy of the blockchain. It's just that new transactions to be added on chain, you don't know if it's actually going to succeed until you are online and have that global state updated.
I see.
Yeah.
Right.
But it is, it's an interesting. There are definitely winning scenarios with Cardano over and above Ethereum. But in terms of decentralization, you can say one is as decentralized as the other in terms of the copies of the blockchain. Where you do have centralization now is that Cardano was built from the ground up as a proof of stake blockchain, and that's why we have 3,000 node operators, pool operators, contributing verification, validation of transactions. Ethereum was created as a proof of work blockchain, and so when it was operating as a proof of work, it was fully decentralized, fully thousands of nodes operating. Now you've got severe centralization in terms of its network topology, because there's something like I can't remember the stats. It's like 80% of the transactions on Ethereum are validated by 3 nodes or something. So you've got a centralizing factor in terms of actually getting transactions online, and that's because you've got the ability for operators, parts of your network, to be the most efficient parties will win out when you've got various factors, and various factors play into it. But one of them is a fee market, which a lot of clever people that I really respect talk about. They want to bring a fee market to Cardano as well to improve the rewards for node operators. I don't want to do that with Cardano. We don't have it now, and as a result, we know our fees, how much fee we're going to pay in advance of any transaction we make. I think that's a really strong bonus to have in our tool set. When you enter a fee market, then you're saying, The fee is not known up front. You can go into a transaction, and if the chain is heavily congested, then you'll have to pay more for that transaction to go through. And so the person who actually validates that transaction gets a bit more money, which is good for the for the operators of the network, but it's a worse experience for the users of the network. And I think long term, if you want a business to be successful, you've got to please your users. You've got to have that customer is always right mentality, because otherwise someone else will come along with a different solution that better pleases the users, and they'll win out. So you got to make decisions for the users.
From a user viewpoint, I agree that there's nothing worse than not knowing how much you're going to get charged for a transaction. So if you just know that upfront, this is how much you're going to pay, it's a far better feeling than getting zapped with something that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, and it just results in you sitting, like on Ethereum, I just sit around for days on end waiting for the gas fees to be low enough for me to do a small transaction.
Right.
You only really feel comfortable doing an Ethereum transaction when it's thousands of dollars worth of value.
I mean, definitely for the Cardano transactions, I've got a lot of comfort pressing the go button by knowing that it's only going to cost me 0.88 hour or something like that. So I think that from a user viewpoint, that is definitely the best option to implement. Yeah.
And the fact that that transaction's cost you 0.8 today, and in a week's time it will cost me 0.8, and a week's time I'll got me 0.8.
That's even better.
Yeah.
If that's sustainable fee, then that's far better. Knowing that.
Yeah, and there is I do feel like there is a problem brewing in Cardano's rewarding and incentives for running nodes. I think there's better ways of handling it though than going to a fee market. But for example, we've just had this stake pool poll where we were talking about altering the parameters for stake pool operators, reducing the minimum fee from 340 down to 170, and increasing the number of ideal pool operators from 500 up to 1,000. And that was the sort of debate that was going on, and that is a useful changes in the right direction, I believe. But it still won't mean, we'll still have 2,000 pool operators, for example, operating at a loss. So really, you want to be able to grow that number of operators, or at least accommodate the number of operators, and have them making enough money without just stealing from everybody who's using the chain. And that is going to require something to change, because I think at the moment there's too many operators not making money for it to be sustainable, and 500 I think is too few. I do see the argument that 500 is plenty. Certainly you can run a robust network on 500 because other chains are doing it on 5. But reality is we want this to be a global operating system. We want to have every nation represented. We want it to be viable for every country to be running several operators. And 500 is just too low for me. I still think that you can target 500 people if you've got enough money and incentive to go after 500 people in the world. You can go after them and find them, and bribe them, coerce them, whatever it takes to sway the network your way. Doubling that makes it exponentially harder. Doubling it again, is another factor again. It's just increasing our robustness by increasing the number of pool operators. So anything we can do in that direction, increasing the number of operators and making sure that they are viable, is a good thing in my mind. So yeah, I've been doing some sums on the stake pool. Stake pool is doing well. We're in a golden period at the moment because we've got the extra small stake pool alliance rotating delegations come our way again. So if you look at the pool at the moment, we are looking really healthy. This is pool.pm, probably my favorite blockchain explorer. You can search for the pool on here and you'll see we're now up to 1.97 million ADA staked to the pool. We've got 97 delegators and we're up to 40 blocks. So we're effectively, we've added on another 500,000 in delegation through this rotating delegation from xSPO, and 25 something new delegators. So this is the power of stake pool operators getting together, saying this is a way to support small stake pool operators coming onto the network. We will we'll put some of our funds, some of our ADA into a rotating delegation that will then go to, on a set cycle, a known cycle, to each participant in that network. And they will have that boost of ADA delegated that will give them the opportunity to then mint blocks. And once you start minting blocks, then you're suddenly on the radar of more people. Additional delegation, which then draws you closer and closer to becoming long-term viable. So a little shout out for the xSPO alliance. This alliance is, I think it's the strongest alliance of stake pool operators out there. In reality, that there are other ones that do really good work, mission-driven pools, Cardano stake pool alliance, single stake pool operator alliance, Spokra, but the one that's most active, that has weekly meetings, whether it's a bear market or a bull market, the guys that are trying new things, that are working together to build new tools, they're doing a great job. And so I do get in there whenever I can. It's on a weekend, which is always a tricky time for me. But yeah, really active alliance and well worth following. I can't actually find their listing on there. I thought there should be. So this is the website, and you can see all the alliance members. I don't know how many we are now, but the numbers keep growing. And to be a participant in this alliance, you're really committed to only ever running one stake pool, and to have a healthy attitude. So you've got to be pro Cardano, you've got to think long term, and you've got to be committed to decentralization. And so all the pools on here have made that commitment, just like the Cardano single pool alliance has. And we have a large crossover of members, in fact. The guys in here, I've talked about several of them in the past. So let's pick on someone. So someone I really rate very highly is Apex Pool, George from Apex Pool. He is a really committed pool operator, kind of been around for a long term. He's received delegation from Cardano Foundation as well as IOG. He is constantly contributing hardware to the test nets. So applications that are building out their software run it on testnet first. We've got preview and pre-prod test nets. He runs pools on both those at various points in time. He's written documentation. He's really helped contribute. So Apex Pool, George is a really good guy to follow, to keep an eye on, to support in any way you can. So yeah, shout out to my fellow XSPO Alliance member. And there's a growing number of these guides that are written. So if you are a pool operator and you're looking for additional help, then this is a great place to come get it to, in terms of documentation and just general good practice, best practice for running a node on the network. Cool. Any other questions that have born out of the last few minutes of?
Yeah, I do have one question, Jonathan.
Mhm.
Jonathan, earlier Luca mentioned about Chat GPT getting hacked.
Mm.
What are perplexity? I mean, is that same thing? I know perplexity is like open source, things like that. So do you have any news on that? I mean, is it still okay? Use perplexity instead of Chat GPT, or
Yeah, both are still fine to use. The leaked passwords on Chat GPT mean that you should change that password and never use it again. So I've changed my password on Chat GPT this morning, but I always use Bitwarden to generate my passwords, so they're always random. Every one of my passwords is, well, I'm not quite fully 100% hygienic in my password management, but I do have some repeat use somewhere still, because I've been on the internet for 20 years, and at some point in time, the Bitwarden didn't exist to create you passwords at random. So I do need to go back to some of those old apps still and change my passwords. But for clean password use, always use a new password for every app you're interacting with. For every login you do, create a new password. I use email and password every time I use it. I try not to use single sign-on even. So when you have the Google or the Apple sign-on, or Stripe even have one now, GitHub, I always try and use the email and password option, because that can be controlled and changed and updated very granularly. There's no, like, if someone gets your Google password and you've signed into everything with your Google account, then you're at severe risk of having your personal identity exposed, your banking credentials exposed, your travel history exposed. All these things are points of information, bits of data about you as a person that are, they are what identity thieves are after. If someone can clone your your accounts, your behavior, then they've got the ability to spend all your money and to issue new IDs and credentials from the authorities. And that's when you can end up with a whole world of pain. It's a massive headache to try and restore your stolen identity. So just by having good password management, you can avoid those problems. In this scenario,
use email with different password. Is that what you're trying to say, right? Like changing password.
so it's certainly, yeah, use different passwords on all your email accounts. But when you're signing up for a service, so like Chat GPT. So I signed up with Chat GPT. I don't actually even need to remember if it had multiple sign-up options. But if you're signing up for the first time, then yeah, invariably nowadays you'll be offered to continue with Google, continue with Microsoft, continue with Apple, and several others. I always go for the email option, because that one I know then is independent. As long as I've got control of that email box, I can get past reminders sent to it, and as long as I've got, that's one email box that is far less of a target than my Gmail account, for example, because someone knows if they can get into my Gmail account, then they can access my calendar, my emails, my travel history, because through Google Maps, all that sort of stuff is stored up in Google. Whereas if they just get my email account, which is not attached to any other services really, it's just a mailbox, then it's far less of a target for an attacker. And so I'll use email address all the time, and I'll use a password all the time, rather than use any of these single sign-on services.
But what about this? This SSO, which is two-factor authentication, isn't it? So you'll have a, in that scenario, is that still not good enough?
Definitely good to do that as well. But you look at the complexity of recovering your password from Google. That's reached this level of complexity for a good reason. So now you've got two-factor authentication on your Google accounts. You can do it from your email box. It can send you an email to send you your token, your PIN. It can text you a number. It can do a pop-up notification on your Google app on your phone. It can, did I say SMS already? It can also do a UB key or a secure key. Your browser can now issue a key. And these are all different ways to recover access to your Google account. And that complexity and variety is trying to stay ahead of the attackers. So the attackers, you know, can steal your phone and still receive SMSs. You can have SIM card cloners that can come and find your SIM card, clone it, and then receive your two-factor authentication access. If you've got your Google mailbox and your SIM card cloned, then they'll still be able to get in. Or even if they just look, like I signed in on a bank lobby probably 15 years ago on my HSB local branch. I swiped my card in the door to get into the lobby after hours. I then put my card into the machine, typed my PIN in to access my accounts. By the time I'd got home, my accounts had been frozen because someone had cloned my card, and I had no idea how it was done. It turned out later on that they had replaced the swipe mechanism on the door of the lobby. So I'd gone through it. It had then cloned my card at that point. They had a little wireless webcam in the lobby of the bank that was pointing down at the PIN keypad on the cash machine itself. So when I put my card in the machine, typed in, they then had my PIN and they had the card, so they could clone it and spend it anywhere they wanted. So there is extreme lengths for people to go to try and attack you. And the more fragmented, the more separated your means of logging in are, the better in my case. So any single sign-on is always going to be a bigger target for attackers. It's always going to be more complicated to defend because of the fact it's a bigger target than if you've just got the smallest, most pointless, most useless thing as your signing credential. Now, long term, this is a really exciting thing for crypto to solve and blockchain technology to solve, because now we all have self-sovereign wallets. We know how to create a new wallet. We can create a wallet with no funds in that actually is our single sign-on mechanism quite easily. So once the websites, applications start offering us logging in with a Cardano wallet or MetaMask or something like that, then we'll be able to sign into all these applications just by using our browser extension and not having to remember passwords, not having to do two-factor authentication. Just as long as you've got the ability to sign a transaction, to sign a signing request, you can then sign in. And that is much harder to steal, but because it will have a sole use case, it's easy for you to throw it away and start again. And so instead of having to remember email addresses and have a mailbox attached to it, you could actually just have a disposable blockchain address. And so that is that's coming, and that's going to be really, really powerful and solve a whole lot of problems with passwords. So passwordless logins is what we really need. In the meantime, password hygiene is still important. Use Bitwarden, create new passwords for every situation, and like here, when you're given a choice, I always go for the fragmented, painful, old school email address method rather than using any of these guys from. And again, these are big centralized services. It just takes one of them to have one slight slip up, to have one rogue employee with access to too much stuff, and that's an entry point for social engineer, hacker to get in and steal a whole load of accounts. And so that, no doubt, is what's happened with Chat GPT. Someone's either made a mistake or has been coerced into, and our passwords and our email addresses have been released to the internet, which is bad. But in this instance, I know that none of my other apps are using that Chat GPT password. The most that they'll have access to, if somebody does decide that I'm a worthy target, is that they'll go into my Chat GPT account, they will, they'll have my password, they'll have my email address, they'll be able to log in and see my, I've reset the password already, so that's not showing up on my Windows account. But the most they can see then is my chat conversation history with Chat Gpt. They can't access my bank, they can't access anything else. So that's the importance of using an independent password each time. And my practice again, you know, you grow a gut feel when you're building login screens and things like that as for a living, and that's what, you know, we do as an agency, Fluid 7. We build applications with login screens. We interact with authentication mechanisms. We have to implement single sign-on for customers all the time, and you get a gut feel for what is the most robust approach to building stuff out. And so that's what I end up going for in my own personal usage, is I just go for email address and password, independent passwords all throughout. And I switch on two-factor authentication for every account that supports it. And that keeps everything separated, isolated from each other. And yeah, it makes me much more of a difficult target. And people will move on and try elsewhere after a while.
So we don't interact our crypto transactions. That's purely on a standalone laptop.
Really good. Yeah, you can even separate your hardware devices. That's all my crypto stuff is all my hot stuff is done on one laptop. And I do have a couple of demo accounts on my phone, but really I just try and isolate it to one physical device. Yeah, nice one, Paul. And that's good practice as well. And it just makes it more it's a more difficult job to attack, and an easier job for you to restore. If that laptop gets stolen, you know exactly what needs to get deleted and what needs to get recreated, and you know, spending passwords changed and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Nothing. We got 5 emails for our crypto. They never get used for anything but crypto for authorization. Nothing is ever sent to it. It's never used in any other format.
And that's really good. And I got stung by excuse me. I got stung by using the same email address. Recently, there was a DeFi project that you needed to hand over an email address to use it, and that was interacting with a DeFi project. So I thought, just a DeFi project, but it actually wrote those email addresses into an on-chain transaction in an encrypted format, but a poorly encrypted format. So anybody could go in, decrypt that transaction, and then harvest the email addresses off. So my email address is probably on another database now. I'm at the point now where my email address is known by so many people, and in so many hacked databases, that I consider it just a lost cause. I'll never be able to secure that email address again. And so if there's something, you know, really critical, then I'll create a new address and use that, like Paul says, and that's the best practice. That's really good. But yeah, I still do use that email address for several things, just because I've got, again, 20 years of legacy to try and clean up, which I'll get to at some point. But hopefully before then, we'll just have done away with email addresses being attached to passwords in any way, shape, or form, and we'll just have you know, wallet logins everywhere.
Paul, do you find it difficult then to have it to operate on a separate standalone laptop?
Piece of cake, because we know that's all it's for. Both my wife and I get on that and do what we need to do without any issue. So I'm at home. My wife obviously has access. She does what she needs to do on a computer.
So I'm so much used to using mobile phones now that the laptop is like a secondary. It's the mobile phone most handy, tablet is the second most handy, and then laptop is like the last priority I go to for anything else.
Like others have said, if they stick it's got facial recognition on your mobile phone. If they stick it up against your face when you're in duress,
Yeah.
they've got the details.
Mm. Yeah, there's lots of attack vectors. I met someone at the Cardano summit, not the last one, the one before that, who had actually, he was out in London one evening in conversation with somebody, and they found out he was into crypto. After that evening out, he then was out on the street, and some guys just came up to him and said, "Can you take a selfie for us? And or take our picture for us?" And in the meantime, there was confusion with who was holding which phone and whatnot. And they got hold of his phone, legged it around the corner, and tried to get into his crypto account. And so, you know, people will go after targets that are easiest for them. And so if they know you've got certain assets, they'll come after you. If they can see how you interact with it with a mobile phone, then they'll come after you. And so, yeah, you want to be conscious, and you want to think about it all the time, but you don't want to be fearful, because fear just stops you from getting any benefit out of life. Fear is a horrible thing, but yeah, you just need to be conscious and aware, and protect yourself, and put yourself to some discomfort. Like certainly a phone is the easiest thing to interact with, and it's always in hand and stuff like that. But you know, I set rules for myself. Like if I am going to have something on my mobile phone that can allow the spending of money, then it can only be a certain limit. So, you know, I'll have a top up debit card that I might have on my phone that can only spend a maximum of £250 or something. And so that way, the worst I'm going to lose is 250 quid, and probably will cover anything I'm going to spend in the shop anyway. And with my hot wallets, then I limit the most I can store in a crypto hot wallet to a figure I'm comfortable with, and everything else then goes into cold storage above that amount. And so just
when you're out on say out on a holiday or at a conference, do you take your hot ledgers or things like that with you, or do you leave it at home, or how do you separate the two?
So I will have my my cold storage, my most secure, I don't take away with me. But what I do have is duplicates of the signing of the private keys. So and of course everything's password locked as well. So if I'm on holiday and my laptop gets stolen, then they can't get in anyway, because the laptop is an encrypted drive. They'll have to decrypt the storage mechanism, and they'll need my password to get into it, for starters. Then they'll need to find the private keys where they're stored. Then they'll need a signing phrase, passphrase that only I know, that's not stored anywhere on that device. So yeah, there's layer upon layer that you can work with.
Separated enough.
Yeah. If I needed to spend crypto on holiday, which I hope will be the case before too long, then I'll just have a certain budget will go into a hot wallet and probably go on my phone. But yeah,
I must say it takes a bit of getting used to, isn't it, to get that mind frame. But once you step that way, that mindset, then it's probably easier. But to begin with, you find it a lot more inconvenient.
Yeah, certainly it's not an easy thing to do, but I don't tend to make life difficult for myself if I can avoid it. Where I do make life difficult for myself, it's for good reason, and the complexities of self-sovereignty are worth it, because it means that my asset stores are mine. They're in my hands at all times. I don't have to go to a banker to say, give me my funds. They're actually, I'm responsible for them. If I lose them, then it's my fault. If I need to spend them, I can spend them whenever I need to. And I'm much more comfortable with that in the current climate than having money tied up in a bank, because you know certainly every other month probably I'll have a transaction denied for some reason or other on my credit cards, and that can be down to just fraud profiling that the companies are doing. You know, they're doing a good job. They're doing what they feel is best to protect. Yeah, but ultimately it's an inconvenience and a threat to me and my assets, because if I'm in an emergency and need to spend, and I'm in a strange place because I've traveled and I can't spend on a normal payment method, then you know that could put me in a sticky situation. So I'd much rather have them fully under my control, and you know.
But to have your cryptos on cold storage, does that mean that there's no staking options available at all? Is that right?
No, they can be fully staked.
Okay.
So again, another thing that's thought through fully from Cardano's point of view, because it was proof of stake from the inception. Your staking mechanism is entirely separate from entirely separate, but it's detached from your holdings. So for every wallet that you have multiple receive addresses, and you've also got a staking address. So again, if we jump back into Eternl, we can see in this hot wallet of mine that I've got a balance of 1,400 ADA. I've got all these, that's my current sort of receive address. I've also got all these historical receive addresses. But then also I've got this separate address that's stored on the homepage. That's my staking key. And so that staking key is one and only. It's unique to this wallet, and that actually determines whichever stake pool I've got this stake key attached to, determines how much rewards I'm getting and how much is delegated to that pool. So I can move this stake key between pools at any point in time, and if I've got the funds in cold storage on a ledger, on Trezor, Engrave, on my air gap machine, they can sit there detached and separate, as long as I've got this stake key, because the blockchain is storing the state of my assets, not the actual assets themselves. And my stake key is a similar thing. It's detached from the assets. I can move that around. So like the best implementation I've seen of that from a technical standpoint is the Optim Finance bonds, which I use for funding the pledge on my stake pool. So with this, I'm not going to show you exactly, but because again, I've switched to Windows temporarily. So this bond mechanism will let stake pool operators issue a bond where they say, I will lend you, or I will take funds and give you a high rate of return, up to 1 million ADA from multiple parties. And the way that then you control, so this is all based in the smart contract, and the way you control where that key is pointed. So for example, I've borrowed 1 million ADA. I don't have access to the funds. I can't spend that 1 million ADA because it's tied up in this smart contract, this bond. So as long as I control aspects of the bond, but I can't control the spending of the funds. And so the aspect that I can control in it is where that 1 million ADA is staked. So I can change the address that stake address is pointing to. So under my bonds, if I had access to it, I could go in, find my fluid bond, and if I connect to my wallet, it would show me the stake address and the pool ID of what that stake address is connected to. And if I connect to my wallet, which is a controlling wallet, it's holding the NFT that proves that I can manage that bond, I could then change the stake address or the pool ID that stake address is pointing to. So I could effectively move the staking of that million ADA from my pool to another pool, if I chose to do so. And that is again just showing you. So I have no mechanism to spend that million ADA. You who contributed to the bond, you put money into it, you have no mechanism to spend that million ADA until the conditions of that contract are served. And the conditions of the contract are, it's got to be a year's worth, unless I haven't made my interest payments to you. If I stop paying my interest, then the bond will liquidate. Your asset, your capital will be returned to you, and the capital that I put in will be liquidated. So you won't get your interest for the remaining period of the bond, but you'll get your capital back, and you'll have earned interest for those, 3 months, whatever it is in the meantime. And I've been a bad actor, so I don't get anything out of it. But the conditions are written in code, and they're on chain, and nobody can change that after the fact. Once it's been set in motion, it's in motion. And so this is the new world that we're now interacting with. We've got rights and voting powers, and they are detached from our asset storage, and so on and so forth. And I don't know if I've said that too well, but yeah.
After after the 12 months, then you obviously get we get our profits, or whatever you want to call it. What happens after that? Does it carry on, paying out yearly? What happens, for argument's sake, you decide, okay, I don't want to take this bond on any longer.
Mm-hmm.
We just get out our share in the bonus, and that's it.
So in our setup, you will get back your capital that you put in, and you'll have earned the interest over that 12-month period. I decide not to take out another bond, and you'll get your ADA back. You'll also get some opt-in tokens, because that was part of the deal as well. And me, for participating, I'll get some opt-in tokens as well. But I will effectively have paid out my interest, which will go to all the bond holders. I will pay the fee that goes to the Optim Finance platform, which is like 0.2%. And at the end of it, I will have accrued all the interest, all the staking rewards from that million ADA back to my wallet. And so that's how I've been using to pay the interest, is by earning interest. And the slight difference between the two, I'm hoping, will be made up in the rise in price of ADA over the period. So I used fiat to buy the bond at the first place, to translate it into ADA, bought the bond, and all the interest I'd need to pay out over the year. And then hopefully by the end of the year, ADA price will have risen, and I'll be actually up overall rather than out of pocket. Is the hope, is the desire. Cool. Now, I've just got a client hassling me in the background, so I'm just going to check something, if you bear with me for 1 second. Any other questions come to mind?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you, Jonathan.
Okay.
Are you going to this conference in London on, I think it's in
On the
June?
1st, isn't it?
July? Or
1st of July, yeah.
it's to do with it's the workshop, isn't it? I can't go because I'm pre-booked for that weekend.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am as well. They're There is a chance that it might move to the Sunday, in which case I might get opportunity to go. But at the moment, I think it's on a Saturday, and I've had a 50th birthday booked for months and months, so I can't get out of that. Not that I want to. But yeah, it's a Cardano improvement proposal 1694,
That's cool.
discussing Voltaire, the move to decentralized governance within the Cardano blockchain as well. So
Are
yeah,
they likely to hold that elsewhere? Like
there's
in-
been several going on actually. So there are some online ones as well you can get involved with still
okay.
if you want to participate. Just find hopefully there'll be a link off to the database of all the calendar of events. Here. I'm looking for the link through to the meetup. I think there's like a calendar on meetup, but can't actually see it. And because I've switched to Windows, I don't have my browsing history. Hosting. Yeah, okay. I'll dig it out.
Okay.
And then hopefully post it to Discord before too long. Yeah, it's just the Colorado one that happened earlier. Yes, okay. And that's the 1694 workshops. They're good to get involved in. They are wrapping up now. So we've had a couple of months of them. There's a final one that's happening in Edinburgh. I think might be invite only. And I haven't had an invite, so I don't think I'll be going. But that one is sort of the final wrap up. And then there'll be some decisions and voting going on probably as to what happens exactly next, and what path we take through into Voltaire. But a couple of things I did want to sort of cover, just wrapping up today, were, as I mentioned in Luca's call, Project Catalyst is now back up and running again. Fund 10 is live, open for proposals. They've got a brand new tech stack that will be running the show from Fund 11 onwards. We're still using IdeaScale for 10, but some of the things are already in motion. Like this website now is much more friendly than anything else we've had in Project Catalyst to date. Certainly from IOG, we've got community ones that are just as good, but this is now the sort of central point to come and get a feel for what Project Catalyst is about. There will be growing amount of information out here. So here you can see the challenges. So if you've got a proposal that will fit within one of these challenges, this is where it will end up being listed. I am on the challenge team for development infrastructure, which means that I'll be supporting proposers as they put in ideas to this challenge, and seeing if it's in the suitable category, it's the right category, seeing if their proposals are written well, helping them point towards resources in terms of building out, getting the best chance of getting seen and heard, and their ideas brought forward. There is several other challenges going on. So if any of those make sense to anybody coming up with an idea, I'll be submitting an idea into the XSPO tools and community projects. So in this one, I've already got my placeholder on IdeaScale. I'm again submitting proposal to build out an integration with B1G1, so we can actually have stake pools who do charitable giving, having those the metrics on the pools, where those charities are located, and what are the sustainable development goals those charities are really impacting. So whether it's poverty or gender equality or green topics or anything like that, those metrics can then be gathered as a community and brought back to really give us some idea on the impact that the chain is making to real human lives. That's my desire to see built out. So I'm going to be asking for funds to build out, and I'll be integrating B1G1 to help with the tracking of the metrics and vetting of the charities, and actually handling the fiat transactions as payment to charities. But you've probably all heard about that before, so do go out and shout about it. Once the link is up on IdeaScale, I'll get it over to you. The IdeaScale platform is this link. And you do need to register to access it and interact with it, but it's worth doing. So looking for ways to earn in this whole project Catalyst, you're going to earn as a voter. So simply by finding a project you like, voting for it. I suggest you vote for mine. That'd be great. You'll earn extra rewards by participating as a community reviewer. So vetting some of the proposals, giving your opinion on whether they are weak or strong, or ask questions, you can earn as a community reviewer. And you can also earn as a proposer. So if you have an idea, you can go and seek funding in it. You can also earn as a referrer. So if you tell somebody about Project Catalyst, who then put in a proposal and win their funds, then you will get a referral bonus fee. So, and I've earned that way in the past. So yeah, looking for ways to grow your holdings without spending any more fiat. This is a good way to do it. And you know, on a particular bullish note, ADA is dirt cheap at the moment, and if we go back to previous highs, you know, we're talking about 30 times growth from where we are, 20 times growth from where we are, quite easily. So we could see much more than that, as Bitcoin is already looking very healthy in comparison to the attacks, or in relation to the attacks that are coming up against it. So yeah, feeling confident long term still, but again, go out, do your research, do your due diligence, and figure out what's good for you, because no one will lead you by the hand into an opportunity without a hidden agenda. Mine is that I want you to become delegators. I want you to delegate to my stake pool, fluid pool, and then I can actually pay for some of the expense I've been pouring out over the last couple of years. But yeah, just glad to have you all here. So unless there's any more questions, I think we'll wrap up for the day. I've had no crashes today. Yay!
Awesome.
Yeah, all good. Great. All right then. Thanks for joining. See you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye.